William Sanders stared at the Father's Day card, his weathered counselor's hands trembling as they traced his daughter's handwriting. Happy Father's Day to the world's greatest dad. The words blurred through welling tears, a cruel mockery beside the empty snake container on his coffee table. The police had taken the reptile, but couldn't remove the venom of betrayal that coursed through his veins. 40 years guiding families through crisis, yet he'd failed to see the danger coiled in his own home. He clutched the framed photo of Samantha as a child, her gap-toothed smile now a stranger's face. "Why?" he whispered, voice cracking as a sob escaped. The grandfather clock, a wedding gift from his own father, ticked accusingly in the silence of his violated sanctuary. Outside, Jessica spoke with officers, her earlier warnings now vindicated. Alone with his grief, William faced the unthinkable. His only child had become his tormentor. William Sanders adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and squinted at the morning sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows. Father's Day. His 68th such celebration, though only 42 as a father himself. He poured coffee into his favorite mug, a chipped ceramic one declaring him world's best dad in faded letters, and inhaled the rich aroma that had started his mornings for decades. "Happy Father's Day?" Jessica called, appearing in the doorway with a small wrapped package. His wife of 42 years still moved with the quiet efficiency of her nursing days, silver hair cut in a practical bob that framed her observant eyes. "Pancakes coming up. Tradition is tradition." William smiled, feeling the familiar warmth of their shared rituals. He glanced at the wall where his counseling certificates hung beside family photos, tangible proof of his life's work helping troubled families navigate their conflicts. A lifetime of wisdom that had earned him respect, security, and the peaceful retirement they now enjoyed. The doorbell's unexpected chime startled them both. "Bit early for visitors," William remarked, setting down his coffee. Through the front window, he caught a glimpse of a delivery person hurrying back to their van. On the porch, a rectangular package waited, wrapped in brown paper. William's heart quickened as he recognized Samantha's handwriting on the label. "For Dad, Happy Father's Day." His fingers traced the letters, remembering how he'd taught her to write, guiding her small hand with his own. Samantha sent something? Jessica's voice carried an undercurrent William chose not to hear. "Looks like it." He brought the box inside, settling it on the coffee table. Their recent argument about money, Samantha's increasingly desperate requests, his reluctant refusals, had left a tension between them. Perhaps this was an olive branch. Jessica's sharp intake of breath drew his attention. "William," she said, pointing to small holes puncturing the paper wrapping. "Those are air holes." Air holes? His counselor's mind processed the implication while his father's heart refused it. He adjusted his glasses, an unconscious habit when his professional and personal worlds collided. "Don't open that," Jessica said firmly, reaching for the phone. "I'm calling the police. Now let's not overreact." William straightened the box, aligning it with the table edge, creating order when emotions threatened chaos. "It's probably just a plant or something." Jessica's silence spoke volumes. Her hand hovered over the phone, wedding ring catching the light. 42 years of partnership in that hesitation. "Samantha wouldn't," William began, but the sentence hung unfinished as memories surfaced. Samantha's cold rage when he'd refused her last financial demand, her disturbing comment about making him sorry. "William." Jessica's voice softened. "This isn't the first time." He watched her disappear into her sewing room, returning with a manila folder he'd never seen. Inside, bank statements with withdrawals he didn't recognize, printed emails with Samantha's increasingly hostile tone, notes in Jessica's neat handwriting documenting incidents he'd dismissed or never known about. The package shifted slightly on the table. William's hands, counselor's hands that had guided countless families through crisis, trembled as he stared at the evidence of his own blindness. The grandfather clock in the hall, a wedding gift from his father, ticked accusingly in the sudden silence of their Sunday morning. The package moved again, more noticeably this time. "Call them," he whispered, professional composure cracking. "Call the police." Jessica's fingers were steady on the phone as she spoke with the dispatcher, her former nurse's calm taking over. William envied her composure. He stood frozen beside the coffee table, unable to look away from the package that occasionally shifted with something alive inside. "They're sending someone right away," Jessica said, setting the phone down. "They said not to touch it." William nodded mutely, his mind racing between professional analysis and parental denial. This deliberate act, if it was what he feared, suggested a level of hostility beyond their recent disagreements. The counselor in him recognized the warning signs. The father in him rejected them. "I should have shown you sooner," Jessica said, opening the folder on the dining room table, spreading its contents methodically. "But you always defend her." William's throat tightened as he scanned the documents. Bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals from their joint account, credit card charges he'd never questioned, emails where Samantha's requests escalated from polite to demanding to threatening when denied. "She's going through a rough time," he said automatically, the words hollow even to his own ears. He adjusted his glasses, straightened the papers into neat piles, ordering physical objects when his emotional world tilted. "William," Jessica's voice was gentle but firm, "you've spent 40 years helping other families see their destructive patterns. It's time to look at our own." A particular email caught his eye, dated just after their last argument 3 weeks ago. "You'll regret choosing your precious retirement over your only child. Some father you turned out to be." "I didn't want to believe it," he admitted, his counselor's training finally overriding his father's heart. The signs were there, weren't they? Jessica's hand covered his, her wedding ring warm against his skin. We both wanted to believe the best of her. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, bringing both relief and shame. In all his years of counseling families through crisis, William had never imagined becoming the subject of a police call himself. "What will we tell the neighbors?" he asked, suddenly conscious of appearances. "The truth," Jessica replied, "that we're protecting ourselves." William's eyes moved to the family photos lining the wall. Samantha's graduation, her wedding to Eleanor, the birth of Robert and Hannah. Happy moments that now seemed like scenes from another life. Had he missed signs even then? Had his professional insight failed when most personally needed? The package shifted again, a faint scratching sound emerging from within. William flinched, imagining what might be inside. A snake? A scorpion? Some other creature meant to frighten or harm? "All those families I helped," he murmured, voice breaking. "And I couldn't see what was happening in my own home." Jessica squeezed his hand. "We'll get through this. Together." The police cruiser pulled into their driveway, lights flashing silently. Through the window, William saw neighbors emerging onto porches, curious about the Sunday morning disturbance. "I should have listened to you sooner," he told Jessica as they moved toward the door. "You saw what I refused to see." The package on the coffee table shifted once more as William opened the front door to greet the officers, his professional mask firmly in place despite the churning in his stomach. Whatever was inside that box, and whatever it revealed about his daughter, he would face it. 40 years of counseling others through their darkest moments had taught him that denial only prolonged pain. What he couldn't yet know was how much pain still lay ahead. 2 police officers stood in William's living room, their presence transforming the familiar space into something formal and foreign. Officer Chen, a young woman with alert eyes, crouched beside the package while her partner, Officer Reyes, took notes on William's account of recent tensions with Samantha. You said your daughter sent this? Officer Reyes asked, glancing up from his notepad. That's her handwriting, William confirmed, pointing to the label but keeping his distance as instructed. We argued about money 3 weeks ago. She wanted a larger loan than we could provide. Officer Chen pulled on latex gloves with a clinical snap that made William wince. We'll open it carefully. Animal control is on the way, but I'm trained for basic handling if needed. William and Jessica stood back, her hand gripping his arm as Officer Chen used a knife to carefully slit the tape along the box's seam. The scratching inside grew more pronounced, something clearly agitated by the disturbance. Sir, ma'am, please step back further, Officer Reyes directed, positioning himself between them and the package. William felt a surreal detachment as Officer Chen slowly lifted the lid, revealing a smaller container inside, a clear plastic terrarium with air holes, secured with additional tape. Inside, a corn snake with orange-red patterned scales moved in sinuous curves, its tongue flicking against the plastic. A snake, Jessica whispered, her grip on William's arm tightening. A small envelope was taped to the terrarium's top. Officer Chen carefully removed it, opening it with gloved hands to extract a note. Her expression darkened as she read it. Sir, she said, turning to William with professional compassion that reminded him of his own counseling manner. You should see this. The note, in Samantha's precise handwriting, read, Thought you could use some company on Father's Day. Now you know how it feels to be afraid in your own home. William's face drained of color as the full impact hit him. This wasn't a thoughtless prank. It was a calculated act meant to terrorize. His professional composure, maintained through decades of hearing clients' darkest secrets, cracked entirely. He sank into his armchair, suddenly looking every one of his 68 years. We'll document this as harassment, Officer Reyes said, photographing the box, terrarium, and note. Animal control will take the snake. Officer Chen was examining the terrarium more closely. There's something else, she said, finding a hidden compartment beneath the snake's bedding. She carefully extracted several folded papers. William recognized them immediately. Printouts of his financial statements, retirement accounts, and property deed, with handwritten notes in the margins calculating values and accessibility. These are our financial records, he said, voice barely audible. Private information she shouldn't have access to. Officer Chen placed everything in evidence bags. Sir, this suggests premeditation and possibly identity theft or financial fraud. We'll need to take a formal statement. William nodded mechanically, the counselor in him observing his own shock with detached professionalism while the father in him grieved. For 40 years, he'd guided families through betrayal and conflict, always believing in the possibility of healing and redemption. Now, facing his own daughter's deliberate cruelty, those beliefs seemed naive. Jessica stood by the mantel, hand covering her mouth, eyes fixed on the family photos, the same images William had just been contemplating. She's always been manipulative, she said quietly. But this... Financial exploitation of seniors is something we take very seriously, Officer Reyes explained, his tone gentler. Especially when it involves family members. The phrase exploitation of seniors struck William like a physical blow. In his counseling practice, he'd referred clients to elder protection services, never imagining he would become a statistic himself. An animal control officer arrived, efficiently transferring the corn snake to a proper transport container. Non-venomous, he confirmed, but certainly not something you want arriving unexpectedly. As the officers prepared to leave with their evidence and the snake, Officer Chen handed William a card. Elder Services, she explained. They can help with protective measures, both legal and financial. William stared at the card, its very existence in his hand a symbol of how profoundly his world had shifted in less than an hour. The Father's Day morning that had begun with coffee and tradition had descended into a nightmare of betrayal and police reports. What do we do now? he asked Jessica as the front door closed behind the officers. She met his gaze steadily, the years of their partnership evident in her unflinching support. "Now," she said, "we protect ourselves." The grandfather clock struck 10, its chimes eerily normal in a household forever changed. William looked down at his trembling hands, counselor's hands that had guided countless others, and made a silent vow to apply every principle he'd taught to his own situation. Starting now. The house fell silent after the police departed, leaving William and Jessica alone with the violated sanctuary of their home and the folder of evidence that could no longer be ignored. William moved with deliberate calm to his home office, a space where for decades he had helped others make sense of family chaos. Now it would serve his own crisis. "Bring everything," he told Jessica, his counselor's voice returning as he settled behind his desk. "Every statement, email, text message. Everything with Samantha's name on it." Jessica returned with not just her hidden folder, but a box William had never seen. "I've been keeping records for years," she admitted, unable to meet his eyes. "At first, I thought I was overreacting. Then I realized I needed proof. For myself, and eventually for you." William swallowed hard, adjusting his glasses. "You shouldn't have had to do this alone." He cleared the desk, creating space for their investigation. From the bottom drawer, he removed a yellow legal pad and his favorite pen, tools of his trade for documenting client patterns. Today, the client was his own family. With methodical precision that belied his inner turmoil, William began analyzing Samantha's communications chronologically. He marked each request for money in red, each emotional manipulation in blue, each threat in black. The pattern emerged with painful clarity: escalating demands, rage when denied, periods of charm followed by greater demands, isolation tactics to separate him from Jessica's influence. "Classic financial exploitation," he murmured, the professional term inadequate for the personal betrayal it represented. "I should have seen it." Jessica placed a bank statement before him, several withdrawals highlighted in yellow. "These were all unauthorized. She must have accessed our account somehow." William remembered Samantha's request for help with online banking last year. Her shoulder pressed against his as he entered passwords, her casual questions about his security measures. At the time, he'd felt needed, important to his adult daughter. Now the memory carried a sinister recast. "She gathered information deliberately," he said, the realization burning in his chest. "This wasn't opportunistic. It was planned." The afternoon sun slanted through the office windows as they worked, casting long shadows across decades of family financial records. Credit card statements revealed purchases William had never made. Email threads showed Samantha's calculated escalation from appreciation to entitlement to threats. William documented each discovery with the detached professionalism that had made him an effective counselor. Yet beneath the calm exterior, each revelation was a knife twisting in his heart. He found himself remembering Samantha as a child, her gap-toothed smile when he pushed her on swings, her fierce concentration learning to ride a bicycle, her tearful gratitude at their sacrifices for her education. "Where did we go wrong?" he asked Jessica during a brief break, his voice cracking. She placed her hand over his. "This isn't about our parenting, William. Adults make their own choices." He nodded, grateful for her wisdom, then returned to the evidence. A particular series of text messages caught his attention, exchanges between Samantha and Robert, his 17-year-old grandson. References to Grandpa's retirement fund and easy money revealed Samantha had discussed their finances with her son. "She's involving Robert," William said, the realization adding a new dimension to his pain. Trying to normalize this behavior. "There's more," Jessica said reluctantly, opening a folder containing printouts of social media posts. Samantha had shared veiled references to William's selfishness and abandonment, crafting a public narrative that painted her as the victim of uncaring parents. William's counselor training recognized the classic tactics of financial abusers: isolation, reputation damage, justification. His personal grief, however, couldn't be contained by professional analysis. His hands, steady through decades of guiding others, trembled as he reviewed the evidence of his daughter's systematic betrayal. "I need to make some calls," he said finally, straightening papers into neat piles. "Financial advisor, bank, attorney." Jessica looked surprised at his decisiveness. "You're ready to take action?" William removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose where pressure had built throughout the afternoon. "In 40 years of counseling, I never once advised a client to enable their abuser." He looked at the wall of family photos, focusing on the image of Robert in his graduation gown. "She's taught me that I can't help her by giving in. But I might be able to help Robert and Hannah by setting boundaries now." The grandfather clock chimed 5, marking the end of Father's Day, a day that had begun with tradition and ended with transformation. William reached for the phone, his resolve strengthening with each number dialed. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and painful decisions, but tonight he had taken the first step from victim to advocate, for himself, for Jessica, and for the grandchildren who might still be saved from Samantha's influence. "Banking fraud department, please," he said when the call connected, his voice steady once more. "I need to report unauthorized access to my accounts." As darkness fell outside his office window, William Sanders, family counselor, husband, father, and grandfather, began the process of reclaiming control from the daughter who had betrayed him. The snake had been removed from his home, but its venomous legacy remained, demanding antidotes he'd never thought he'd need to administer to his own family. The financial advisor's office was antiseptically clean, with leather-bound portfolios and muted artwork that spoke of wealth discreetly managed. William sat beside Jessica, his posture upright despite the weight that seemed to press on his shoulders. 3 days had passed since the snake incident, days filled with phone calls, account freezes, and the quiet grief that came with accepting painful truths. "Mr. Sanders, I've reviewed the documentation you provided," said Marcus Fleming, the silver-haired advisor they'd trusted for 15 years. "The unauthorized transactions are concerning, but what troubles me more is the pattern they represent." William nodded, his counselor's training recognizing the careful phrasing. "You're seeing financial exploitation." "I'm afraid so." Fleming opened a folder containing highlighted statements. "We've flagged all accounts for heightened security and changed access protocols. I've also prepared these forms to remove Samantha completely as a contingent beneficiary." The pen felt unusually heavy in William's hand as he signed each document. Each signature was both protection and severance, necessary boundaries that nonetheless cut like blades. Jessica's hand rested on his knee, a silent affirmation they were doing the right thing. "What about the grandchildren?" William asked, the question that had kept him awake for 3 nights. Fleming's expression softened. "The trust option we discussed would be ideal. It provides for Robert and Hannah's education directly, without going through Samantha." 2 hours later, they sat in attorney Diana Michael's office, the trust documents prepared with efficiency that spoke of too much experience with similar cases. "Unfortunately, elder exploitation is among the fastest-growing areas of my practice," Diana explained, adjusting reading glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. Her initial skepticism had vanished once she reviewed the evidence, replaced by a protective fierceness William recognized from his own advocacy for vulnerable clients. "Will she be able to contest this?" Jessica asked, her practical nurse's mind always steps ahead. "She can try," Diana replied, "but the documentation you've provided, combined with the police report, creates a compelling case for these protective measures. The trust for the grandchildren is particularly solid." William signed the final page, establishing the educational trust that would support Robert and Hannah's future while protecting those assets from Samantha's reach. It was the one bright spot in an otherwise devastating week, the knowledge that his legacy to his grandchildren remained intact. Outside the attorney's office, spring sunshine seemed incongruous with William's inner landscape. They walked slowly to their car, each lost in private thoughts, until Jessica broke the silence. "She's going to be furious when she finds out." William nodded, opening the passenger door for his wife with the courtesy of long habit. "I know, but we can't keep enabling her." The phone rang during dinner, Samantha's name flashing on the caller ID. William and Jessica exchanged glances before William answered, putting the call on speaker. "Dad, what the hell is going on with the accounts?" Samantha's voice filled their kitchen, sharp with accusation. William took a steady breath, centering himself as he would before a difficult counseling session. "Samantha, we've made some changes to protect our financial security. The unauthorized withdrawals and the incident on Father's Day have made these steps necessary." "Unauthorized? I was just borrowing." "We have the records, Samantha." His voice remained calm despite the thundering in his chest. "All of them. The bank has been notified, and our accounts are now secure." A pause. Then Samantha's tone shifted to the wounded vulnerability that had always pierced William's defenses. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own daughter. After everything I'm going through." Jessica tensed beside him, but William held firm. "We're not discussing this further. The decisions have been made." "You'll regret this," Samantha hissed, the vulnerable facade dropping instantly. "You think a snake scared you? You have no idea what I can do." The call ended abruptly, leaving a silence heavy with threat. William's hand trembled as he set down the phone, the confrontation draining the professional composure he'd maintained through the day's appointments. "She's escalating," he said quietly, the counselor in him analyzing even as the father in him grieved. That night, alone in their bedroom, the full emotional impact finally broke through William's careful control. He sat on the edge of the bed, a framed photo of infant Robert in his hands, and wept, for the daughter he had lost to whatever darkness drove her, for the grandchildren caught in the middle, for the family that would never again gather without the shadow of betrayal. Jessica sat beside him, her arm around his shoulders, offering silent comfort. 40 years helping families heal," William said between ragged breaths, "and I couldn't heal my own." "This isn't failure," Jessica said firmly. "It's courage. You're doing what you always taught others to do, setting healthy boundaries even when it hurts." Has someone you trusted ever betrayed you? Comment below with your experience, like if you've felt this heartache, and follow for William's journey to reclaim his dignity. The days that followed brought escalating harassment. Samantha called at all hours, her messages alternating between rage and manipulation. When blocked, she created new numbers to bypass their defenses. She appeared unannounced at their door, forcing them to refuse entry to their only child, a moment that left William physically ill afterward. Most disturbing were the reports from neighbors that Samantha had been questioning them about William and Jessica's routines, health, and financial situation. "She's building a case," William realized with professional clarity and personal dread, "trying to paint us as incompetent so she can challenge our financial decisions." A week after the snake incident, William received an email from Robert's school account, a furtive message sent during library period. "Grandpa, Mom's really angry about whatever happened. She keeps saying she'll make you pay. I'm worried about what she might do. Can we talk sometime when she won't know?" William stared at the screen, his grandson's concern adding a new dimension to the crisis. Not just his and Jessica's well-being at stake now, but potentially Robert's as well. "We need more than financial boundaries," he told Jessica that evening, showing her Robert's message. "We need legal protection." She nodded, the worry lines around her eyes deepening. "A restraining order?" William thought of the decades of family counseling behind him, the countless hours helping others navigate family conflict toward resolution. He had always believed in redemption, in the power of communication to heal even the deepest wounds. But as he remembered the snake box, the unauthorized withdrawals, the threats, and now the potential danger to Robert, William Sanders, family counselor, advocate for reconciliation, believer in second chances, made the hardest decision of his professional and personal life. "Yes," he said quietly, "it's time for a restraining order." 2 weeks after Father's Day, William couldn't remember the last time he'd slept through the night. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his shirts hung looser on his frame. Jessica wasn't faring much better, her normally steady hands showing a slight tremor as she poured their morning coffee. "3 calls last night," she said, setting his mug before him. Between midnight and 4 a.m. William nodded wearily. They'd stopped answering Samantha's calls, but the incessant ringing jarred them from sleep regardless. When they silenced their phones, she'd taken to calling neighbors with fabricated emergencies, causing late-night knocks on their door. "Martin called," William said, referring to his friend from the weekly men's breakfast group. "Samantha approached him at the grocery store yesterday, told him I'm having cognitive issues and she's worried about my financial decisions." Jessica's hand tightened around her mug. "She's systematically undermining your reputation." William had seen this pattern in his counseling practice, the isolation tactics used against elderly victims, cutting them off from support networks by sowing doubt about their competence. He'd just never imagined being the target. "We have the appointment with Diana this afternoon," he reminded her. To discuss the restraining order. The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime now a source of anxiety rather than welcome. William approached cautiously, peering through the peephole to see Eleanor, Samantha's wife, standing on the porch. Her unexpected presence sent a jolt of concern through him. "Should we answer?" Jessica whispered from behind him. William hesitated, then nodded. "Eleanor's never been the aggressor." He opened the door partway, keeping the security chain engaged. "Eleanor, this is unexpected." She looked uncomfortable, glancing over her shoulder as if fearing observation. "William, I'm sorry to come unannounced. I need to talk to you about Robert." The mention of his grandson overrode William's caution. He removed the chain and ushered Eleanor inside, noting her disheveled appearance and the dark circles under her eyes that mirrored his own. "Is Robert all right?" Jessica asked, maternal concern evident. Eleanor sank onto the edge of the sofa, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "He's physically fine, but things at home are deteriorating. Samantha's obsessed with your finances, staying up all night researching ways to challenge your competency. Eleanor's voice dropped. "She's talking about getting power of attorney over you." William felt a chill despite the warm June morning. "On what grounds?" "She's gathering evidence of cognitive decline. Those neighbors she's been speaking to, she's recording their comments, taking things out of context." Eleanor looked up, guilt clouding her features. "I've enabled this for too long, making excuses for her behavior, but involving the children crosses a line." "How are Robert and Hannah handling this?" Jessica asked gently. "Robert sees through it. That's becoming a problem. Samantha accuses him of disloyalty when he questions her." Eleanor twisted her wedding ring anxiously. "Hannah's younger, more confused." "Samantha's been telling them you've cut them off financially because you don't love them anymore." William's heart constricted. The trust he'd established was specifically for his grandchildren's benefit, yet Samantha was weaponizing even this act of love. "Why are you telling us this?" William asked, the counselor in him alert to ulterior motives even as the grandfather in him reeled from the information. "Because I'm afraid," Eleanor admitted. "Samantha's behavior is frightening me. The snake incident wasn't impulsive. She planned it for days, seemed to enjoy imagining your reaction. And now she's—" She stopped, seeming to reconsider her words. "She's what?" Jessica pressed. "She's been asking about your medications. Which ones might cause confusion or memory issues if the dosage were altered?" The implication hung in the air, too terrible to voice directly. William felt his professional detachment, already worn thin, crack completely. "Are you saying she's considering tampering with our medication?" His voice sounded foreign to his own ears. Eleanor nodded, tears welling. "I found her researching it online. That's why I'm here. Whatever financial disputes you're having, this goes beyond that. I'm worried about what she might do." After Eleanor left, with promises to keep Robert and Hannah safe and to call if Samantha's behavior escalated further, William sat in stunned silence. The grandfather clock ticked in the hallway, marking seconds in a world that had fundamentally shifted. "We need to call Diana," Jessica said finally. "Move up the appointment." William nodded mechanically, but made no move toward the phone. 40 years of counseling experience hadn't prepared him for this level of betrayal. The realization that his daughter might be contemplating actions that could physically harm him and Jessica. The kitchen window overlooked their backyard garden, where William had built a treehouse for Samantha 30 years ago. The structure still stood, weathered but intact, a monument to a father's love and a childhood that seemed impossibly distant now. "I failed her," he whispered. "Somewhere along the way, I must have—" "No." Jessica's voice was firm as she took his hands in hers. "William Sanders, you listen to me. You were a good father. You are a good father, even now setting boundaries when they're needed. Samantha's choices are her own." William felt the professional part of himself stir, recognizing the truth in Jessica's words. How many times had he told clients the same thing? That they weren't responsible for the harmful choices of adult children, that boundaries were acts of health rather than abandonment. The phone rang, Diana Michaels returning their urgent call. William answered, his decision crystallizing as he explained Eleanor's visit. "I'll file the temporary restraining order immediately," Diana said, her voice grim. "And William, given what you've told me, I strongly recommend changing the locks and installing security cameras." The suggestion that their home needed physical protection from their daughter was the final straw. William felt a physical pain in his chest, a grief so profound it manifested as actual heartache. After ending the call, he walked slowly to his office and sat at the desk where he'd counseled so many families through crisis. The wall of family photos seemed to mock him now, smiling faces concealing the rot that had been growing unseen. "William?" Jessica appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her face. "Your color doesn't look good." He tried to respond but found he couldn't catch his breath. A vice seemed to tighten around his chest, pain radiating down his left arm. Professional knowledge cut through his confusion. Heart attack symptoms. Not just metaphorical heartbreak, but the physical consequence of weeks of stress and anguish. "Jessica," he managed, counselor's calm deserting him. "I think I need an ambulance." The next hours passed in a blur of emergency rooms, medical terms, and the persistent beeping of monitors. Not a heart attack, the doctors eventually concluded, but stress-induced symptoms serious enough to warrant overnight observation. From his hospital bed, William watched Jessica sleeping uncomfortably in the visitor's chair, loyalty and love evident even in her exhaustion. The night nurse had asked about emergency contacts, and William had experienced the surreal pain of saying, "Just my wife, not my daughter." Morning brought discharge instructions focused on stress reduction and follow-up appointments. As William signed the forms, his counselor's mind cataloged the irony. A lifetime spent helping others manage family stress, now prescribed rest and medication for the physical toll of his own family crisis. In the hospital parking lot, Jessica handed him her phone. "Martin's been trying to reach you. The whole breakfast group knows you're here. Apparently, Samantha's been calling them all." William scrolled through multiple messages of support from his friends, men he'd known for years but rarely engaged with beyond surface conversation. The final message from Martin read, "Whatever you need, we're here. All of us have been where you are, one way or another. You're not alone, my friend." The simple acknowledgement broke something loose in William's chest, not the constriction of stress this time, but the release of isolated suffering into shared experience. "I think," he said carefully as Jessica drove them home, "it's time I stopped handling this alone." "The restraining order?" she asked. "Yes, that. But also—" William watched the familiar streets of their neighborhood pass by, the community where they'd built their life together. "It's time to tell people the truth. No more protecting Samantha's reputation at our expense. No more suffering in silence." The decision felt like setting down an impossibly heavy burden he'd carried too long. As a counselor, William had always advised transparency and community support for families in crisis. Now, he would finally take his own professional advice. "Starting with the men's breakfast tomorrow," he continued, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "I'm going to tell them everything." Jessica reached across the console to squeeze his hand, relief evident in her expression. "It's about time." For the first time in weeks, William felt something like peace settle over him. Yeah, the situation with Samantha remained dire. The restraining order still necessary, the threat still real, but he was no longer facing it from a place of isolated shame. As they pulled into their driveway, William noticed new locks on the front door, installed by Martin and the breakfast group during his hospital stay, a text message explained. The simple act of friendship brought unexpected tears to his eyes. The breaking point had come, but it hadn't broken him. Instead, it had broken open a path toward protection, community, and perhaps eventually healing. Not the family healing William had spent a career facilitating, but a different kind. The healing that comes from accepting what cannot be changed and building anew from what remains. The county courthouse stood imposing against the morning sky, its marble steps and towering columns designed to inspire both confidence and intimidation. William adjusted his tie nervously as he and Jessica approached, the manila folder of evidence clutched firmly in his hand. 3 days had passed since his hospital release, days spent gathering documentation and preparing for this moment. "You're sure you're up to this?" Jessica asked, concern evident in the slight furrow between her brows. William nodded, drawing strength from the 4 men walking beside them, Martin, Carlos, Henry, and Jim from his weekly breakfast group. Their presence had been Martin's idea. No one should walk into a courthouse alone, he'd declared at yesterday's gathering, after William had finally shared the full story of Samantha's exploitation and threats. "Remember," Diana Michaels said, meeting them at the entrance, "the temporary restraining order is just the first step. The judge will review the evidence today, but the hearing for a permanent order comes later." William straightened his shoulders, feeling the weight of what he was about to do. Throughout his counseling career, he had occasionally advised clients to seek legal protection from family members, but experiencing it firsthand brought a different perspective entirely. Inside, the courthouse hallway echoed with footsteps and murmured conversations. William felt suddenly small beneath the vaulted ceilings, just another elderly man seeking protection from a system that might or might not understand the particular pain of family betrayal. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your peace? Comment below about your experience, like for support, and follow to see if William finds the security he deserves. "Mr. Sanders?" the clerk called from a desk, recognition flickering across her face. "I attended one of your workshops years ago on family reconciliation." William felt a flush of shame, then reminded himself of what he'd always taught. Seeking protection was not failure, but courage. "Life takes unexpected turns," he said quietly. The clerk's expression softened with understanding. "It certainly does. The judge will see you shortly." As they waited on a hard wooden bench, William noticed a young man entering the courthouse, his tall frame and hesitant posture immediately familiar, despite the baseball cap pulled low over his face. "Robert?" William whispered, rising instinctively. His grandson approached cautiously, glancing over his shoulder. Mom thinks I'm at the library. Eleanor told me you'd be here today. Jessica reached for Robert's hand, tears gathering in her eyes. It's not safe for you to be seen with us right now. I know. Robert's voice had deepened since William had last heard it, another reminder of time passing in their fractured family. But I wanted you to have this for the hearing. He handed William a flash drive. It's recordings, Mom talking about her plans, what she's going to do to get control of your money. Some of it from when she thought I wasn't home, some when she was trying to get me involved. His eyes, so like Samantha's once gentle ones, reflected pain beyond his 17 years. I can't stay, but I wanted to help. Before William could respond, Robert was gone, disappearing through the courthouse doors as quickly as he had appeared. Diana immediately took the flash drive. This could be significant evidence. I'll have my assistant review it before we go in. 30 minutes later, William sat before Judge Lowell, a stern-faced woman whose penetrating gaze reminded him of his third-grade teacher. She reviewed the documentation methodically, the police report from Father's Day, financial records showing unauthorized transactions, threatening messages, and transcripts from Robert's recordings. Mr. Sanders, she said finally, looking up from the papers, you've had a distinguished career helping families navigate conflict. I'm sure this situation brings its own unique pain. William nodded, unable to trust his voice. Having reviewed the evidence, including these disturbing recordings, I'm granting the temporary restraining order immediately. She signed the document with a decisive stroke. Your daughter will be prohibited from contacting you, approaching your home, or communicating through third parties. The hearing for a permanent order is scheduled for 3 weeks from today. Relief washed over William, not joy. There was no joy possible in these circumstances, but the quieter comfort of boundaries finally established. As they left the courtroom, the restraining order officially filed. He felt both lighter and heavier. A necessary step taken, but at what cost? Outside on the courthouse steps, William turned to thank his friends for their support, only to find himself unexpectedly embraced by Martin, the others joining in a circle of solidarity. You did the right thing, Martin said gruffly, his retired judge's authority lending weight to the words. I've seen too many seniors suffer in silence out of misplaced family loyalty. William looked at these men, casual acquaintances until now, suddenly transformed into essential allies. I don't know how to thank you all. No thanks needed, Carlos replied. Just breakfast next Thursday, same as always. The normalcy of the invitation, the continuation of routine despite upheaval, brought the first genuine smile to William's face in weeks. As the group dispersed with promises to check in later, Diana approached with final instructions about the restraining order. The sheriff will serve the papers today, she explained. Be prepared for an angry reaction, but remember, any violation of the order is grounds for immediate legal action. On the drive home, William and Jessica sat in contemplative silence, the folder of evidence now replaced with legal protection. The restraining order felt simultaneously like defeat and victory, the formal acknowledgement that their daughter had become someone they needed protection from, yet also the first step toward reclaiming peace. What happens now? Jessica asked as they pulled into their driveway, the new security cameras Martin had installed tracking their arrival. William gazed at their home, the sanctuary they had built over decades now fortified against their own child. Now, he said quietly, we start rebuilding. Not the family we had, but the life we still have ahead of us. The courthouse clock tower chimed noon in the distance, marking both an ending and a beginning. 1 week after the restraining order was granted, William sat in Diana Michael's office reviewing the final documents for his grandchildren's educational trust. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the certificates on the wall behind Diana's desk. professional accomplishments, much like those that had once lined William's own counseling office. "Everything's in order," Diana said, sliding the papers across her desk. "Once you sign, the trust will be irrevocable. Robert and Hannah's education will be funded regardless of any future legal challenges from Samantha." William removed his pen, the same one he'd used throughout his counseling career to take notes on countless family crises. Today, it would secure his grandchildren's future while setting a boundary his daughter couldn't cross. "She's already trying to contest it," Diana continued, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. "But the documentation we've gathered, combined with the restraining order, creates a solid foundation. The trust should withstand any challenges." William's signature flowed across the page, decades of signing professional documents evident in his confident strokes. Despite everything, his hand remained steady, a small victory that didn't escape his notice. "There's something else," Diana said, removing her glasses. "Eleanor called my office this morning. She's filed for separation from Samantha and is seeking full custody of the children, citing increasingly erratic behavior." William looked up sharply. "Is she safe? Are the children?" "For now. She's staying with her sister and has enrolled in a domestic violence support program." Diana's expression softened. "She asked if you would be willing to meet with Robert. Apparently he's struggling with the situation and has specifically requested to see you." The prospect of seeing his grandson, properly, not in a furtive courthouse encounter, sent a wave of emotion through William's chest. Of course. But how? "The restraining order. The order prevents Samantha from contacting you, not Robert. Eleanor suggests the coffee shop on Maple Street. Neutral territory, public enough to be safe." 2 days later, William arrived at the busy cafe 20 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. He ordered herbal tea instead of his usual coffee, heeding his doctor's post-hospital advice to reduce stimulants. When Robert entered, William barely recognized him. In just weeks, his grandson seemed to have aged years, his lanky frame hunched beneath the weight of family turmoil. He scanned the room anxiously before spotting William, relief washing over his features. "Grandpa," he said simply as he slid into the chair opposite. William resisted the urge to embrace him, sensing the boy's fragility. "It's good to see you, Robert." "Really good." The barista delivered Robert's hot chocolate, ordered in advance by William, remembering his grandson's childhood favorite. And for a moment, they sat in awkward silence, the gulf of recent events stretching between them. "I'm sorry," Robert finally said, his voice cracking. "About Mom, about everything." "No," William said firmly, counselor's instincts surfacing. "None of this is your responsibility. None of it." Robert stared into his hot chocolate, his finger tracing the rim of the mug, a nervous habit William recognized from his own repertoire. "She's not the person I thought she was. All those times she told me you and Grandma were being unfair, that you didn't care about us." He looked up, eyes damp. "I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know how bad until the snake," William finished quietly. Robert nodded. "She was so proud of that idea. Kept talking about how she'd finally make you understand what it felt like to be afraid." He shuddered. "I should have warned you. You're 17, Robert. It wasn't your job to protect us from your mother. But I knew some of what she was doing with the money. She tried to get me to help her access your accounts online." Shame colored his features. "I did help her once, before I really understood. That's why I had to give you those recordings. To make up for it somehow." William reached across the table, resting his hand lightly on his grandson's arm. "You've shown remarkable courage, Robert. Those recordings helped secure the restraining order that's keeping both our families safer." They talked for nearly 2 hours, the cafe emptying and refilling around them. Robert shared the full extent of Samantha's deterioration, her obsession with William's finances, her manipulation of the children, her explosive anger when challenged. William listened with his counselor's attention, but his grandfather's heart, hurting for the burden Robert had carried alone. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," Robert said as their meeting drew to a close. "But Eleanor said to tell you she's filing for the divorce next week. She's scared about how Mom will react." William nodded gravely. "The restraining order can be extended to protect Eleanor and you children if necessary. Diana will help with that." "What about college?" Robert asked, the normal concerns of a high school senior breaking through the family crisis. "Mom always said you were paying, but now—" William smiled, the first genuine smile of their meeting. "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I've established a trust for you and Hannah. Your education is secured, regardless of what happens with your mother." Robert's expression transformed, a glimpse of the carefree boy he should have been breaking through the premature adult he'd been forced to become. "Really? Mom said you'd cut us off." "Never," William said firmly. "You and Hannah are not responsible for your mother's actions, and my commitment to you hasn't changed." As they prepared to leave, Robert hesitated, then pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "My college application essay. Would you read it sometime? It's about how you've influenced me." William accepted the paper with trembling fingers, this small gesture of continuity amid chaos overwhelming him more than any legal document had. "I'd be honored." Outside the cafe, they parted with an awkward hug that quickly transformed into a desperate embrace, Robert's composure finally crumbling. "I miss how things used to be," he whispered. "I know," William replied, his own eyes damp. "But we'll build something new, different, but still connected." As Robert walked away, William remained on the sidewalk watching until his grandson disappeared around the corner. The weight of their conversation, both painful and healing, settled around him like a familiar coat, heavy but necessary. That evening, William sat in his favorite chair, Robert's essay open before him. The opening lines caught his breath. "My grandfather taught me that family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about respect, boundaries, and the courage to protect what matters." As a family counselor for 40 years, he helped countless people navigate their darkest moments. Now, watching him face his own family crisis with dignity and principle, I'm learning his most important lesson. Tears blurred William's vision as he continued reading, seeing his life's work and personal struggle through his grandson's eyes. When Jessica found him an hour later, he was still sitting there, the essay in his lap, a complex piece having settled over his features. "Robert?" she asked simply, understanding in her eyes. William nodded. "He's going to be okay." Different, marked by all this, but okay. That night, William slept soundly for the first time in weeks, the trust established, the connection with Robert preserved, and the knowledge that even amid family destruction, something valuable remained, something worth protecting, worth rebuilding around. The restraining order hearing for a permanent ruling was still 2 weeks away. Samantha's attempts to challenge the financial arrangements continued through her attorney. The family fracture remained painful and irreparable in many ways, but in securing his grandchildren's future and maintaining his connection with Robert, William had preserved what mattered most. Not the idealized family of holiday photographs, but the authentic bonds built on respect and love that could survive even the most profound betrayal. 1 year later, William stood on his front porch, coffee mug warming his hands in the early morning June air. Father's Day again. The garden Jessica had planted in the spring bloomed with vibrant colors, a visual reminder of renewal after the hardest year of their lives. So much had changed. The permanent restraining order against Samantha had been granted without contest after the evidence Robert provided proved irrefutable. Eleanor's divorce had finalized, giving her full custody of the children with court-ordered supervision for Samantha's limited visitation rights. The financial protections William had established remained intact despite Samantha's initial legal challenges, which had eventually ceased when her attorney withdrew representation. William sipped his coffee, watching a robin build its nest in the maple tree. The past year had brought both grief and unexpected gifts. His weekly breakfast with Martin and the others had evolved from casual acquaintance to genuine friendship. His former counseling clients had rallied around him after learning of his situation, many sharing similar experiences that had previously gone unmentioned during their sessions. Most precious was his strengthened relationship with Robert and Hannah. Monthly dinners at Eleanor's sister's home had become cherished rituals, allowing William and Jessica to remain present in their grandchildren's lives despite the painful absence of their daughter. The screen door creaked open behind him. "Happy Father's Day," Jessica said, joining him with her own coffee. Her silver hair caught the morning light, the lines around her eyes deeper than a year ago but somehow more peaceful. 43 years, William replied, reaching for her hand. Their marriage had weathered the storm, emerging stronger in ways neither could have anticipated. The crisis that might have divided them had instead deepened their partnership, each finding strength in the other when their own faltered. "Robert texted," Jessica said. "He and Hannah will be here at noon. Eleanor's dropping them off." William nodded, grateful for Eleanor's consistent efforts to maintain these connections, despite the complicated circumstances. She had apologized countless times for not intervening sooner, for enabling Samantha's behavior through silence. William had assured her that understanding often came too late for prevention, but never too late for change. The doorbell rang, surprising them both. No one was expected this early. William approached cautiously, old habits from difficult days, and peered through the peephole. Martin stood on the porch holding a small package. "Morning," he called cheerfully when William opened the door. "Sorry to drop by unannounced, but the group wanted you to have this today." The package contained a framed photograph of William with his breakfast companions, taken at their favorite diner. Around the edge, each had signed with brief messages of friendship and support. At the bottom, in Martin's judicial handwriting, "Family is sometimes who we choose." "I don't know what to say," William managed, genuinely moved. Martin clasped his shoulder. "No words needed. Just come hungry on Thursday." With a wave to Jessica, he departed as quickly as he had arrived. William placed the photo on the mantel, next to recent pictures of Robert's high school graduation and Hannah's science fair victory. The contrast to last Father's Day, with its snake-bearing package and shattering revelations, couldn't have been more profound. Later that morning, William sat at his desk in the home office that had once been his counseling space. The certificates still hung on the wall, but they had been joined by something new. A small framed article from the local newspaper featuring William's volunteer work with the Senior Center's Financial Exploitation Awareness Program. The past 6 months had given him unexpected purpose. Drawing on both professional expertise and personal experience, he had developed a workshop for elderly community members on recognizing and responding to exploitation, particularly from family members. The shame that had initially silenced him had transformed into determination that others might be spared similar pain, or at least find earlier intervention. On his desk lay the draft of a book proposal his former colleague had encouraged him to develop. Breaking the Silence. Family exploitation and the elderly would extend his advocacy beyond local workshops to a wider audience. William touched the proposal thoughtfully. From his deepest wound had emerged a new chapter of meaningful work. The doorbell rang again, Robert and Hannah arriving for their Father's Day visit. William heard Jessica greeting them, Hannah's enthusiastic voice describing her summer plans, Robert's deeper tones asking about the garden. He joined them in the living room, where Hannah immediately presented him with a handmade card decorated with pressed flowers from Eleanor's garden. "Happy Grandfather's Day," she announced, having decided last year that this alternate holiday better reflected their relationship. Robert handed over a wrapped package. "It's from both of us," he said, though William suspected the thoughtfulness behind it was largely his grandson's. Inside was a leather-bound journal with William's initials embossed on the cover. The first page bore an inscription in Robert's careful handwriting. "For your book. Your wisdom deserves to be shared." William blinked rapidly, touched by his grandson's support for this new endeavor. Their Father's Day unfolded gently. Lunch in the garden, board games in the afternoon, stories and laughter that would have seemed impossible during the dark days of the previous year. Samantha's absence remained an unspoken ache, but no longer a crippling one. After Robert and Hannah departed with Eleanor, William and Jessica sat on the porch swing in the evening light, the same swing where they had opened Samantha's package a year before. The memory no longer carried its paralyzing sting. "Do you think she'll ever change?" Jessica asked quietly, the question they rarely voiced aloud. William considered carefully, drawing on both professional knowledge and personal hope. "I don't know. True change requires acknowledging the harm done, and that's the hardest step." "Do you regret the boundaries we set?" He shook his head without hesitation. "They were necessary. For us, for Robert and Hannah, even for Samantha, though she can't see that. The boundaries had indeed protected them all." William's health had stabilized once the stress reduced. Jessica's tremor had disappeared. Robert had thrived in his first year of college, the trust ensuring his education continued uninterrupted. Even Hannah, initially confused by the family fracture, had found stability in the new arrangement of supervised visits with her mother and regular time with her grandparents. As for Samantha, reports from Eleanor suggested she remained angry and unrepentant, but the boundaries had at least contained the damage she could inflict. "I used to think success meant healing every family I worked with," William reflected, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Now I understand that sometimes success is protecting what can be saved when complete healing isn't possible." Jessica leaned against his shoulder, their decades together evident in the comfortable silence that followed. The neighborhood settled into evening quietude around them, sprinklers hissing gently on nearby lawns, children being called in for dinner. William thought of the families he'd counseled over his long career, the wisdom he'd offered from professional training rather than lived experience. How differently he understood now the courage required to set boundaries with loved ones, the grief of accepting irreconcilable fractures, the possibility of building meaningful life in the aftermath. The journal Robert had given him rested on his lap. Tomorrow, William would begin writing, not just about exploitation and protection, but about resilience and reconstruction, about finding purpose in pain and community in isolation, about the peace that comes not from erasing difficult truths, but from integrating them into a life that continues to hold meaning and connection. The porch swing creaked gently as they rocked, the rhythm soothing and familiar. William Sanders, counselor, husband, father, grandfather, friend, advocate, felt the complex peace of a man who had faced his deepest fear and emerged not unscathed but undefeated. The snake had been removed from his home long ago, but its lessons remained, about vulnerability and vigilance, about trust and boundaries, about the family we're born to and the family we choose. As darkness fell on Father's Day, William held these truths together. The pain and the healing, the loss and the discovery, the ending and the beginning. Not the peace of perfect resolution, but the deeper peace of authentic living, with all its complexity and resilience. A peace reclaimed, hard-won, and finally his own. In the twilight of our lives, when silver crowns our temples and memories outnumber dreams, family betrayal cuts deepest of all wounds. Yet, as William's journey reveals, our greatest vulnerability, trusting those we raised, can become our path to unexpected strength. The fracturing of family bonds, painful as shattered glass, sometimes clears space for authentic connections we might otherwise never have discovered. Life offers no guarantees of happy endings, especially within family circles. The lesson stands clear. Boundaries aren't barriers to love, but expressions of self-respect. When we stop enabling harmful behaviors, even from our children, we honor the wisdom earned through decades of living. Trust, once broken, needn't be carelessly rebuilt. Instead, it can be thoughtfully redirected toward those who prove worthy through actions, not merely blood ties. Perhaps the most profound truth lies in accepting that some relationships cannot be healed despite our best efforts. This isn't failure, but recognition of reality. The peace that follows comes not from perfect resolution, but from the quiet dignity of protecting what remains valuable: our health, our self-worth, our capacity to form new bonds. Like a garden after harsh pruning, what survives often grows stronger, more authentic, more beautiful in its resilience. Thank you for walking alongside William through darkness toward his reclaimed peace. Your own journey may differ in details, but share the universal human struggle to balance love with necessary protection, hope with clear-eyed reality. Have you faced a painful choice between enabling a loved one and protecting yourself? Share your experience in the comments below, like if William's journey resonated with your own, and follow for more stories that honor the complex wisdom that only life's later chapters can bring.